What's up, Gator Nation? Welcome to the latest Gators Online Podcast. Zach Abolverdi and Nick Torre here, and we are not coming to you from Spurrier's Gridiron Grill due to Tropical Storm Nicole that's making its way through the state of Florida. Hope everybody in its path is doing okay, but forced us to stay home on this Thursday as we inch toward to Florida's home finale for the 2022 season against South Carolina. Nick and I have got an A&M game to recap and certainly all the news that's happened throughout the week. Nick, how's it going, my friend?
Just got power back.
All right.
You put power lines underground. You don't expect to lose power, but that's what today was. I literally published a story and was about to tweet it out, and the power cuts out. And I'm like, okay, that's what my phone is for, I guess.
Yeah, we it's weird to have a storm like this, at this point in November. But
it's the third hurricane in the history of Florida to hit Florida in recorded hurricane recorded history. Only third hurricane to hit the state of Florida in November.
Yeah, it's weird times. Fortunately, it doesn't appear that it's going to affect anything that the Gators have going on this weekend, not only the football game, but the second hoops game of the season for men's basketball. Also, a lot of other teams in action this weekend, too. But we will get into the season opener that the Gators had, an impressive showing from Todd Golden's first team. But first, we got to get into what was an impressive showing from the Gators in College Station. They go on the road, get their first SEC road win since 2020. And Nick, I think we went into this game, you and I were on, kind of 50-50. And then we learned leading up to kickoff that A&M was going to have some players out due to the flu that was kind of going around their locker room. I don't think that was, the reason why they lost the game. But Florida definitely came in and put together an impressive second half performance nonetheless, but also, kept it competitive in the first half when it was really a shootout and defense was optional in that first half.
Yeah. And I think certainly one of the things you can point to is, Florida's second half performance on defense was that just, A&M had 11 players available and they got tired in the second half. You can spin things any way you want to spin them. It probably has a little bit to do with it, guys getting tired. But it certainly was, at least for Florida. I'm sitting there in the first half and I'm like, man, the only Tony we acknowledge is Kadarius. And then all of a sudden the defense comes out. Patrick Toney talks to his guys. Ventrell talks to his guys. You and I talked to Justice Boone last night. Justice Boone apparently talked to the guys, some tough love at halftime. And it's just good to see them respond, because in the first half, things were not going well for them. This is an A&M team that not only isn't good, but was sick, suspended, and hurt. Not a good combination if you're getting ready for a football game. So I think just for Florida to be able to respond to the challenge, for them, it does wonders in terms of your mental health and your confidence and your belief. Okay, if we do A, B, and C, we will get our desired result. In the first half, we did maybe half of A, forgot about B, and refused to do C. So if we do these things, we can be who we think we are.
Yeah, and I think, obviously, like you mentioned, for the defense, and Boone mentioned that, how much it showed them just as a unit, like, hey, we actually can do it. We can shut out a team in the second half or in any half. That was the first time they'd done it at all this season. But then I think also as a team to, have an effort that you put forth and to actually get over the hump and win a game. We've seen from this team that they have the ability to rally and come back when they're down, and they never just throw in the towel and quit. They came back against Tennessee. They came back against LSU. They came back against Georgia, but they didn't win any of those games. And it was like, they showed the fight, they showed the brotherhood, all these things that Billy's talked about, but they didn't really get the end result to show for it. Now they have it. And they have it against, one of the NIL national champions this year. So
might be the NIL national champion if they have any money left over to buy a trophy.
Yeah, I mean, between them and Miami, it's not been a good look for those programs, despite what they've accomplished on the NIL front. So, nonetheless, Florida goes out. They kind of avenged that 2020 loss that they had on the road at Texas A&M, one of their few blemishes of that regular season. And I think more importantly, offensively, we saw Anthony Richardson maybe – not his most productive performance in terms of yardage, passing, or running, but it was probably his best performance since the Tennessee game. Just in the way that he ran the offense, the way that he, obviously showed his dual threat ability, not only as a runner, but as a passer as well, had his third straight game without a turnover, and at the end of the day, got the W, most importantly, his first career road win. So I think I think it was most important for the defense to have that type of performance. But as Billy said after the game, he told Richardson on the field, on Kyle Field, as the clock was winding down in the fourth, this game is a pivotal moment in your career. It's going to help you play for a long time. So just as important, I think, for Anthony. And then we saw that dynamic duo at running back do what they do, Nick.
Yeah, you got that 1-2 punch, that pow. It's really interesting how that running back room has evolved. I mean, we had Naquan Wright on this podcast over the summer, and he was talking about getting that number 5 back and what that meant to him. And you're going to see a whole new dude. And I don't think he's done anything wrong. I think it's just been how good Montrell and Trevor Etienne have been. I mean, I can't compliment and talk about how good Etienne's vision and patience is for a 18-year-old kid, a running back. The way that he just takes the ball and will just sit there almost still in the backfield and wait for his lane to open and then bust through it. It's just that's the kind of patience you get from a fourth-year senior or a fifth-year senior running back or someone in the NFL. And maybe it's working with brother and whoever else, the brothers, NFL buddies that are working out with them. But he certainly runs like a very mature player. And that's great to see for a freshman. And I think Montrell Johnson, with his balance, he might be able to do, the beam on the gymnastics team. You see him bounce off a tackle and put a finger on the ground against the goal line, stumble a little bit, and he's back up running, ready to put his helmet into somebody else's chest. That 1-2 punch. And then you add Anthony Richardson, who I think he might be able to get a speeding ticket on campus just running.
Yeah, what was it, 21.4 miles an hour?
They clocked him at almost 22 miles an hour on that 60-yard run, which would have been a touchdown in flag football. No one was close to him.
Yeah.
Looks like me and you trying to chase him out there, Zach. Wasn't going to happen.
And you also add in Ricky Pearsall. And, I think I talked about it maybe on the last episode about wanting to see him more involved in those reverses and end arounds. And there it was Saturday in College Station. It was very productive. I think there was
also one that I'm forgetting the offensive lineman that had a false start. But Ricky got the ball, and there was nobody over on that side of the field. If not for a false start, he might have had another – I can't remember where they were on the field, but another 40-plus yard touchdown.
I think that it was probably one of Billy's best called games of the season. Definitely one of Patrick Toney's best called games, certainly in the second half. But, let's give some credit where it's due, Nick. There's been a lot of opinions on Billy's play calling. I tell you what frustrated fans more than anything last season when it came to offensive play calling was the lack of carries for the running back. Can we give some props to the fact that Montrell Johnson got 22 carries in a game and Trevor Etienne got 17? The last time that I've seen Florida running backs get that many carries in a game, it's been a while. It was
Matt Jones, Kelvin Taylor.
Glorious.
And probably Matt Jones and Kelvin Taylor back in Jacksonville.
Yeah, probably.
Really, really good to see. We've been saying it, run the dang ball.
Yeah.
Texas A&M's, I mean, they had a top 20 national passing defense and a 127th ranked rushing defense. Like, I don't know if you even had a decision if you're Billy Napier making a game plan. The decision was made for you. And then as we get into the game this week, it's kind of made for you again. When you get down to this point of the season, when you're in week 11 going into game 10, you are what you are.
Mm-hmm.
It's on film. Yeah, you're a zebra and you can't change your stripes at this point of the season. Florida can't cover a tight end. That we saw Georgia take advantage of that. They knew what to do, and Florida doesn't have the guys to stop that. Texas A&M can't stop the run. Florida has guys to take advantage of that, and A&M, didn't have any answers for it. This week, South Carolina has trouble stopping the run. Vandy ran for over 200 yards. So, like, again, KISS. They say KISS in school, Zach. Keep it simple, stupid. Don't get tricky this week.
Yeah. And also,
the blueprint is there for you.
Yeah, and to lead into that, Nick, I mean, you're also now potentially down two of your best receivers. The Gators already had Justin Shorter, who missed the Texas A&M game. He's still questionable this week. Billy said that he's practiced in a limited capacity, but doesn't sound like he's going to play. And now the guy that replaced Shorter in the starting lineup made his first career start against Texas A&M. Jaquavion Frazier's comes up with the huge one-handed 19-yard touchdown catch they got hurt on, came back into the game, made another 14-yard reception, finished with a bunch of career highs. And then he has this great performance in his first career start, and then he doesn't get to follow it up because, according to Billy, suffered a significant shoulder injury and is now out for this game. So he's definitely not going to play. Shorter could not play, and that's going to leave you with a true freshman making his first career start in Caleb Douglas, although he's coming off his best game as a Gator, with the plays that he made against the Aggies, that touchdown catch that he kind of just snagged out of the air, that kind of sealed it, giving the Gators a 2-score lead. So, but Billy said not just him, you're going to see a lot more Marcus Burke. And then we saw Khalil Jackson make his first appearance on the depth chart this week for the South Carolina game. So you're down some options at receiver, which will probably lead to more runs.
Yeah, certainly. Man, I wonder if Florida, Billy, we asked about, are you worried about Florida getting the flu from Texas A&M? He's like, we've kind of already done that stuff here. But yeah, just running through those lists of injuries. And I really hope for Justin Shorter's sake, being in senior day, that he's able to go.
Yeah.
Maybe just catch a screen pass real quick and then get back to the sideline. Hey, I caught a ball on senior day. But I think one of the big things we were talking about was also just getting to see the younger guys and getting bowl eligible, getting a chance to see the younger guys and how important those 15 practices were. Right now, your hands being forced to get some of those younger guys in, like Marcus Burke. I mean, fans ask, where has he been? Where has he been? It's like, this is a dude that was almost kicked off the team. If it wasn't for, his teammates asking for him to have another chance. So he's been in the doghouse and been battling and having to work and claw his way out. And
now, in the last 5 games,
he was in a lot at A&M. He was in a lot against A&M, especially after Frazier's, was taken out of the game. It'll be interesting to see him. Obviously, Ricky
look good.
Caleb, paydays look good. So it'll be interesting to see these other guys. But I mean, I just don't know how much the passing game should be involved or will be involved on Saturday.
Yeah, and obviously it's going to be a special day in the Swamp. You've got salute to those who serve. Gators recognizing veterans, first responders, just having military appreciation, something that we've seen as a theme, not only for this team, but this is an annual tradition that the Gators have. Billy, happy to continue it. And then also going to be Senior Day in the Swamp, and interesting, list of seniors and how that's all shaken out. We're going to jump to this first break. When we come back on the other side, we'll kind of break down the guys that will be playing their final game in the Swamp, give you our predictions for the Florida-South Carolina game, as well as our keys to the matchup.
Coming game against Vandy. You don't have to call or email. Just go to spurriers.com, hit the reservation button, pick a date, number of guests, and a time. It's so simple, I can do it. In fact, I just did. Maybe I'll see you tonight.
Welcome back into the Gators Online Podcast. Zach and Nick here, and it is time to turn our attention to the regular season finale at home for the Florida Gators as they take on the South Carolina Gamecocks. Obviously a team that took it to them last year in Columbia and kind of spelled the beginning of the end for Dan Mullen. And obviously the Gators looking to get some revenge, not only against that team, but also against Spencer Rattler, a guy that blew them out in the Cotton Bowl when they faced Oklahoma. And some of those guys that were on that team are on this defense, and they get a chance to get another shot at him. And as Amari Burney said this week, they've been joking amongst themselves that, quote, we owe him one. So we'll see if the Gators can get that done. But obviously, Amari, one of several seniors, he's not going to be actually taking part in the pregame ceremony. He did it last year and decided I don't need to do it again. But they have 18 guys that will be honored. Obviously, this class has been through a lot. You've got guys like Ventrell Miller that have been through 3 head coaches and 3 coaching staff. So, they've certainly kind of had their ups and downs, and trying to finish off on a high note here. And Nick, it's interesting to see how this class has come together, because it's 18 guys, but it's 9 scholarship guys. And then you got some underclassmen as well that aren't seniors in terms of their eligibility, but have been on campus for 4 years and are about to graduate or have graduated.
Yeah, redshirt sophomores Naquan Wright and Trent Whittemore will be walking for Senior Day. Yeah. So that's interesting. And it was a really, all of the 5th-year guys were recruited by Jim McElwain's staff, and that is wild to think about. And 6th-year guy, Ventrell Miller, was suspended his freshman year, but was practicing for Jim McElwain. So
that's a good point. Didn't play for him though.
Been a tough 6 years, Zach. It's been a tough 6 years here in Gainesville. You never want a 6-year senior to have played for 3 coaches.
No, that's not a good look, and
not a good look at all.
And obviously, we mentioned there's 18 guys, 9 of them are scholarship players. 3 of them absolutely cannot come back last year. They've exhausted all of their eligibility. Ventrell Miller being one of them, Trey Dean being another, Jordan Pouncey. Amari Burney is not one of the 9 because we mentioned that he's not walking, but he also cannot come back. Then you've got some 5th-year juniors who are going to walk on Senior Day. Richard Garage, Justin Shorter, Lorenzo Lingard Jr. Now, Shorter, I think for all intents and purposes, he's obviously off to the NFL, certainly with the season that he's had. I think Garage is expected probably to explore the NFL draft, but he did not rule out coming back when he met with the media on Wednesday. But he is going through Senior Day, so that might, suggest where he's leaning. And then
and on pace to graduate too.
Yes. And then, no, he's already graduated.
Oh, that's right. He graduated last spring.
Yeah. Garage and Shorter, they both graduated in the spring. And then it's interesting, the remaining guys. Now you got Lingard, who is a 5th-year junior. Then you've got Will Harrod, Trent Whittemore, and Naquan Wright. These guys are all listed as redshirt sophomores due to their COVID year, but they were all part of the 2019 class. They've been at UF for 4 years. Trent's already graduated, and then Will Harrod and Naquan Wright are going to graduate this fall, along with Lorenzo Lingard. So, just by them, and Billy said, hey, this was, their decision. They wanted to take part in senior day. All these guys that are participating, they view themselves as seniors. They've got their degree. They've been here 4 years. So, by deciding to go through this, they are basically signaling that this is their final game at UF. So, obviously we're going to be looking a lot toward the transfer portal after the season gets over. But these are 4 guys right here that you can expect that are going to be moving on. Now for Lingard, this will be his 3rd time transferring, which you would say, well, that will mean he'll have to sit out again. Not so fast. He'll be able to go to a 3rd school as a graduate transfer, meaning he won't have to sit out and he can play his last year somewhere else. So it's interesting. As Billy said, the COVID kind of situation has thrown things off, but we're getting some clarity here on at least some guys that appear to be moving on.
And listen, I think they did the right thing, giving these players another year of eligibility. But my goodness, the headaches it has caused trying to figure out who's in what class. And I mean, Brenton Cox, before I'm writing the story about him being dismissed, and he's listed as a senior. And then you open his page and it says senior and it says redshirt junior. I'm like, have they decided what class Brenton Cox is? Because it seems like they're like, he's one of these 2. You guys can figure it out. And we've still got, probably 2 more years for that stuff to completely phase out. But trying to figure out eligibility. And then you've probably got coaches saying like, yeah, you got a COVID year, but we're not going to acknowledge your COVID year here. So college football can be a dirty business. So I'm sure there's going to be guys, the transfer portal will be overflowing with guys who have COVID years, guys who, have coaching changes, quarterbacks. I think there's going to be a lot of movement. But yeah, I'm ready for the COVID year to move on and graduate.
Yeah, it makes things a little tricky when you get to senior day. But nonetheless, it'll be happening on Saturday in the Swamp. Make sure you get there early and honor all these guys.
That's a big thing too. Like I know there's a lot going on. It's weird to have senior day be the 3rd to last game. It was just a really heavy front loaded schedule. I mean, Zach, we're going to be in the Swamp for the last time this fall, in just a few days time. Like the season has November
12th.
Yeah. So that's strange. But give these guys, get there in your seats. Don't make them run out for senior day and hug mom, dad, brother, sister, uncle, aunt, whoever's there for them in front of, 50, 60,000 empty chairs. Get there early. I remember being in the stands for Tim Tebow and Brandon Spikes and those guys senior day. That place was 90,000 strong before senior day. The tailgates were stopped early and people made sure that their butts were in the stands. So to me, I think it's a way to show your appreciation for 4, 5, 6 years in some cases of hard work for your university and for your probably favorite team on campus. The least you can do if you're going to the game is to make sure you're there and sending them out the right way.
Absolutely. And obviously it's going to be a sold out crowd for the final home game against the Gamecocks. And, these 2 teams matching up, looking at this is obviously in favor of Florida. Although Carolina has been playing well lately. They lost their last game, but they had a little bit of a winning streak going there. Have a quarterback that Florida fans and players are familiar with, and Oklahoma transfer Spencer Rattler. Nick, you wrote a kind of great story about kind of where things stand with not only his season and kind of how things have shaked out for him at South Carolina, but how the players feel about getting another shot at him. But this is a unique opportunity that most teams don't get when they face somebody in a bowl matchup.
Spencer Rattler was like a scrawny 6'1", listed at 205, probably under 200 pounds. Kid from Arizona shows up to that Cotton Bowl, which Dan Mullen said wasn't even the real Florida Gators. Sure looked like the same helmets. And just torched Florida. I think it was like 31-13 at halftime. Flew all the way out to Arlington to to watch an execution, essentially.
To watch what wasn't the 2020 Florida Gators, Nick.
Yeah. And when it's funny because when you play a guy from Oklahoma and he does that, you're like, well, that was our shot. He got the best of us. Got to move on. Then the next season, I mean, he played so well. He was instantly a Heisman front runner for the next season. Then he starts off slow. Lincoln Riley goes to Caleb Williams. Then Caleb Williams becomes that dude. Lincoln Riley goes to Southern California, USC. Caleb follows him. And then on the other coast, Spencer Rattler goes, SC sounds good. I'm going to the right. You guys go left. It's all good. So the band all went to an SC, just different SCs. So Florida now gets another crack. Ventrell Miller, Amari Burney, Jaden Hill, Trey Dean. These guys were on that team that frankly was embarrassed by Spencer Rattler. And now you get a shot at redemption, one that seemed not even implausible, seemed impossible or an improbability. Unless Florida and Oklahoma were going to match up in another bowl game, it wasn't going to happen. So Amari Burney kind of looked at me, and when I asked the question, he was like, that seems like a trap. I'm like, it is a trap. Fall into it. but he gave us the we owe him one. And I think they do. And I don't think that's, bulletin board material, really. Like Spencer Rattler's like, yeah, I got the best of those guys. Of course they want to beat me this week.
And, they, look at how how he's played and what Florida's defense has done well. One of the things they have is get takeaways. They've gotten a takeaway in every single game this season. They rank second in the SEC in takeaways. They're tied for first in the league in turnover margin. So obviously big turnovers at Texas A&M with the back-to-back strip sacks. And coming into this matchup, you're looking at a quarterback in Spencer Rattler who's thrown 8 touchdowns on the season against 9 interceptions. So he's definitely been turnover prone. They got to think that going into this matchup, they're going to have an opportunity to maybe get some picks against him. They're going to have their hands full, I think, with Marshawn Lloyd, Carolina's leading rusher. He's been productive this season, 556 yards on the year, 9 touchdowns. And then, Nick mentioned it. This is a defense that has not done well defending the run. I'm talking about the Gamecocks. And, they've been better against the pass. So you would expect Florida once again going into this matchup with that advantage that they have with their rushing offense to lean on Montrell and Trevor and AR and try to come out of the swamp with the win. They've gotten above 500 now. They're at 5-4, and one more dub gets them bowl eligible. And Nick, you mentioned it. I mean, Billy's been asked about it now a few times to the point that he's almost kind of bothered by the question. And doesn't want to act like he's happy with bowl eligibility, but nonetheless, it's a big deal for this team. He understands that. It's just not something he probably wants to champion at the podium, but they need to get this win. And obviously you don't want to lose your last game at home. And I think it's important to get it right now.
He wants it will be spun into the depths of hell if Billy Napier says, yeah, man, we're really excited about getting a bowl game. Are you crazy? That's where we've fallen. That's the expectation at Florida to go to the Valero No One Cares Bowl out in Phoenix on New Year's Day. It's like he understands that, but he also understands the importance of those 15 practices and getting another game. And he's a big just guy in terms of the players work hard. They should reap the benefits of their of that work, and you get some swag when you go to bowl games. You get a trip out to somewhere, whether it's Tampa or Arlington or Charlotte for the Duke's Mayo Bowl. I volunteer to dump a cooler full of mayonnaise on Billy Napier if that's the bowl game they go to and if Florida wins the game. I got a kick out of seeing Shane Beamer get dumped with mayo last year when South Carolina won that game. So he's shown a little media savvy. I will get angry at the questions about how big is it to get a bowl game in year one? Because that's not what our expectations are. Listen, when you start the season at Florida, your expectations are to win the SEC East, win the SEC, compete for a national championship.
Yeah.
By the time November rolled around, none of those three were happening. So you adjust you adjust your expectations for this year, not as a program, but for this year, you have to adjust your expectations. And we heard players say, Billy hasn't said it yet, I don't think to us, but we've heard players say what Billy said to them. And after they lost to Georgia, Billy told them, we need to win our next 5. Well, there's only 4 games on the schedule. So he's already talking about a bowl game. And winning out wasn't winning 4 games. It was winning 5. You hear that, Dan? The bowl game is part of the season.
And it was interesting after the win at A&M. If people watch that Journey episode, the latest, after the game, he told his team, we're 1-0. So it was almost like they turned a page on the 2022 season, and this is obviously a new slate in the month of November, and they're trying to run the table, Del Torre. Now the question is, will they? This was actually a game that before the season I picked Florida to lose because I thought.
Well, you're gonna have to stay on that. You're gonna have to stay on that prediction. We're gonna lock you in there. Locking you in.
I thought that they were going to play an A&M team that was going to be a lot better than what we saw Saturday and not be able to get the dub. And that might spiral into a loss into this matchup against South Carolina. But that didn't happen. I do think South Carolina is playing better as of late. And I know that Nick and I need to start differing on some of these picks down the stretch because he's trying to catch me now.
Well, it killed me last week. It absolutely devastated me. And now I would need you to pick wrong 3 times in a row and me to pick right 3 times in a row. So I shot my shot last week and I missed. I was shoot, who was that? Nick.
It was a good gamble though.
It was Nick something. He took the 3 and he turns around, he's celebrating and the ball rims off. Nick Young, maybe something like that from the Lakers, that GIF. I took my shot. I celebrated my shot, hit the back rim, and we were out.
But look, I think Florida State, maybe Nick and I will be on different sides of the pick. Maybe once the Gators get to a bowl game, we could pick differently. I'd be interested to see if he goes against the grain this week because unfortunately for him, despite what I had going into the year.
No. We're locking you into your preseason pick. Zach is all over the Gamecocks this week.
I'm all over them getting the L. And here's the thing. Florida, not only are they chasing undefeated streak, to end the season, winning streak, but they're chasing a complete game. And, I think, previously it was kind of hard to even expect or ask that of this team because they hadn't even shown that they could put together a complete half. Well, now they have. And, now I think the goal moving into the remaining slate is to put that together. I don't know if it's going to be this Saturday against South Carolina. And maybe we won't see it this season from this team. Maybe their best shot is probably next week against Vanderbilt. No disrespect to the Doors, but it is what it is. But I do think that Florida is going to continue to progress in that positive direction, and that's going to continue this Saturday against the Gamecocks. I think that going on the road and getting a win like that was just a huge confidence boost and lift that team needed. Just as validation for everything that they've been doing as a program, everything that they've been doing as a team, all these games that they've been rallying in. So I just think getting over that hump is going to be huge for them, and that's going to kind of carry momentum into this week. It's going to be their final game. It's going to be a huge recruiting weekend. So I just think they're going to put on a show, and I think they're going to cover as well and get the W. What's the spread at now? I think it's like 8. Something like that.
It opened at 8. I think it went down to like 7.5. I think it's about 7.5, which again, Vegas gives you about 3 points. Generally, that's the consensus. Home team gets 3 points. So Vegas is not even really saying that Florida's 7 points better. And if you look at like a lot of the stats on paper, like these teams are the same. Spencer Rattler, like his touchdown pass to interception ratio looks just like Anthony Richardson's. He is not the runner that Anthony Richardson is. South Carolina struggles to stop the run. If you look at the SEC rush defense stats, Florida's right under South Carolina in terms of stopping the run. I just think Florida has a better running game to attack that weakness than South Carolina does. I think for me, all things considered, you've got South Carolina coming in. They're 6-3. I don't think that they have the ability to score with Florida. I think Florida should be able to score in the 30s. The way for me, really, South Carolina can win this game is if they muddy it up. If they're able to sustain long, drawn-out drives to keep Florida's offense on the sideline, if they're able to force some turnovers, which Florida was coughing them up like candy early on in the year, but have kind of figured that thing out these last 3 weeks. Just knocking on wood there for you. I just don't think South Carolina's able to muddy it up that way. And then I don't think their offense is going to be explosive enough to score, 35, 38, 40 points to kind of keep up with Florida's offense. So I've got the Gators in this one. And unless the turnover bug, infest Ben Hill Griffin Stadium this week.
Well, it could, but maybe for the Gamecocks. We'll see if that defense can keep their streak going. We're going to be joined by Wes Mitchell to get some perspective on the Gamecocks and kind of what this South Carolina team is bringing to the table. Covers USC for Gamecock Central, part of the On3 Sports Network. Before we jump to this break, though, and talk to Wes, I do want to mention and give a shout out to the men's hoops team and women's hoops team that they also opened their season, both with back-to-back doubleheaders, getting the victories. And the men's team kicks off the Todd Golden era. Nick had the photo ready to go in drafts of a throwback Todd Golden at St. Mary's, and they go out there and put on an impressive performance with a lot of guys that were featured and productive that were additions by Todd Golden and his staff. Alex Fudge off the bench led the Gators with 16 points. You had Belmont transfer Will Richard right behind him with 14 points. Colin Castleton, kind of an all-around game, 13 points, 5 rebounds, 4 blocks. He was all over the place, had a nice alley-oop that he got from Myron Jones. So the Gators really kind of just jumped out at the start of both halves and put it on Stony Brook. 22-3 run to start the first half, 22-5 run to start the second half. And, it was a 30-plus point lead from that point on. So, but just the way the ball movement was, the energy that they played with, the new faces that were out there, it's a good-looking team. Obviously, they're going to, have some more stiff competition as the season progresses. But, hey, it might not be FSU because they lost their season opener.
Woo! FSU hoops with the whoops to start the season.
Yeah, so that was not a good start for the Noles. The Gators will travel to Tallahassee next week. Game Friday at Tallahassee, so that'll be their 4th game of the season. First up, though, they got another matchup against Kennesaw State in the O-Dome Friday at 7 p.m. So encourage everybody to go out there and catch that matchup if you weren't able to make it on a Monday night. But it was a lot of fun to see this team, Nick, and I think that fans will be pleased with what they see on the floor. Once they get out there, to catch their first game. So a couple more matchups in the O-Dome. They also play Florida Atlantic next week before they travel to Florida State. So it's that time of year, Nick, where basketball season is back. You got football and hoops going on at the same time, which creates a busy month for us in November.
Yeah, Yeah, it almost rivals. November gets busy. It rivals the springtime when you're at the SEC tournament for basketball, spring football, and baseball going on. Baseball and softball going on at the same time. Rivals that for us.
Yeah, and it's gonna be fun to see what this team does. I think that they definitely got a chance to start out with a little bit of an undefeated streak. They got to get over that FSU hump that's kind of plagued this program. And I think obviously they're going to have a good chance based on the way FSU started the season. So we're going to jump to this break. When we come back on the other side, we'll be joined by Wes Mitchell from Gamecock Central to get you guys some perspective on South Carolina and what to watch from that team on Saturday.
Football is back. There isn't a better way to enjoy watching your favorite team than by playing daily fantasy sports with our friends at Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the simplest form of real money daily fantasy sports and pits you against the numbers. Whether you're a fantasy sports nut or a casual fan looking to add some excitement to the games, Prize Picks is the perfect game for you. It's the best way to have action on the game in states like Alabama, Florida, Texas, Georgia, Kentucky, and over 70% of the United States. Prize Picks is currently operational in over 30 states and Canada. You simply select 2 to 5 players and predict if they will go more or less than their Prize Picks projection. You can win up to 10 times your money on any entry. Download the Prize Picks app or visit prizepicks.com and sign in using the code GATORS to get an instant 100% bonus up to $100 on your first deposit. So if you deposit $100, Prize Picks will give you $100 back. If you deposit $50, Prize Picks will give you $50. That's free money. Don't forget that Prize Picks app or prizepicks.com and the code GATORS to claim your bonus today and take your viewing of your team to the next level this season.
Welcome back into the Gators Online Podcast. We're now joined by our guest of the week, Wes Mitchell from Gamecock Central, to talk about the South Carolina Gamecocks. Wes, appreciate the time, man. How's it going?
Yeah, appreciate it, guys. Going good over here. Just getting ready for what I think is going to be a fairly interesting matchup between South Carolina and Florida on Saturday.
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, this program is one that I think Florida fans know pretty well because of Steve's time over there, but obviously one that they're more familiar with because of the recent history, and obviously the Gamecocks putting it on Florida last year. That was kind of the beginning of the end for the Dan Mullen era, and Shane Beamer kind of had it rolling. Recently I know that they won like I think 4 of their last 5 games. What's kind of been your impressions of this team this year and kind of what you've seen from the Gamecocks?
Yeah, I think they had a little stretch there where they kind of got it going, and it felt like they were finding their stride as a team. Missouri came in and sort of threw the brakes on them there briefly and really kind of, I think, brought the fan base back down to earth momentarily. But they did get back on the winning track last week against Vandy. An 11-point win, but really, if you watched it, South Carolina was up by double digits for most of the game. Had a few opportunities to kind of just put it away and couldn't quite put that dagger in, and Vandy hung around, but Carolina kind of controlled that game. So, it's been interesting. I feel like they are an improved team from last year. It hasn't been quite as just like a roller coaster. Like last year, it was like there was a stretch where they'd win one, lose one, win one, lose one. There was never too many high moments in a row, never too many super low moments in a row. So,
no momentum.
Yeah, no momentum at all last year. And they've kind of found that a little bit. They had some momentum going into the offseason, I think. And, now that they face this Florida team that I think on paper is better than them. But I do think this is a South Carolina team that comes in with some confidence. And, that's been something big for Beamer. He's just kind of been pushing positive thoughts, positive vibes. Like that's kind of how he rolls. And you can kind of see that in how his team operates as well.
Positive vibes from Beamer. To me, when you look at Missouri, Florida had struggled with Missouri. Georgia struggled with Missouri. There's just something about Missouri. I think their defensive front 7 is really good, and it seems like South Carolina really tries to run the ball. That's where their strength is on offense, and Missouri's going to make it tough for you to do that. The interesting one for me was to follow that up with a Vanderbilt game where you struggled to stop the run. Vanderbilt is atrocious. Haven't won a conference game since I think 2019 against Missouri. What was the issue there with stopping Vanderbilt's ability to run? And I asked you, and we ran our story today about Satterfield, but is the hate for Satterfield kind of almost taking attention away from South Carolina's defense and their struggles and where they've been this year?
Yeah, I think, that's something Chris Clark, my coworker, and I have talked about quite a bit. Like over the last 2 years, there's been such an emphasis from the fan base on the offensive struggles that when the defense has struggled, it hasn't been talked about nearly as much. Now, part of that is that, the defense for the most part has given South Carolina a chance to win games. And I think a lot of people came in with not very high expectations for the defense last year, and they kind of overall overperformed what was expected out of them. Clayton White has done an outstanding job of sort of getting the most out of his talent. So, I do think that it has gone a little bit under the radar just how much they have struggled to stop the run specifically. Like they've been pretty good against the pass. And this is a team, they don't have great sack numbers, but they have great pressure numbers. Like if they can get you in passing situations, they can get after you. And I think that's kind of worked against them a little bit, though, in that their front, like their edge guys are both kind of built more as pass rushers. One of their best edge guys, Jordan Strong, he's out for the year since week 3. Mo Kaba had really emerged as their top linebacker. He got hurt that same game at Arkansas, out for the year. And really, those are some of the spots. I mean, y'all have covered ball for a long time. You know how every year there's a few spots on the team you're like, man, they cannot afford to have injuries at that position. And then lo and behold, it's like, that's the spot that gets hit. So, it's been a little bit of everything. I think they really don't have a lot of depth on defense. So you have a bunch of guys just playing the entire game. And then, it's been a struggle for them. Like they haven't given up big plays necessarily. It's just been that kind of, 5 yards here, 3 yards here, 7 yards here, and they've struggled to get off the field. So I think the big thing for them is just been teams have been in 2nd and 5 and 3rd and 2, and it's just they're not in situations that are statistically, percentage-wise, going to be easy to get stops. So some of that is they do kind of run like a 4-2-5. That's what they major in that. Like they rarely get out of that. They don't really have a 4-3 personnel group they go too much. They're like, we're going to get athletes on the field and we're just going to hang in there. So it has been a struggle for them. It seemed like I'm giving y'all a really long-winded answer, but I mean, it's been a little bit of everything, y'all. Like they looked like they had maybe turned a corner a little bit against Kentucky and A&M, but then to your point, I think not being able to stop Vanderbilt on the ground was probably the most concerning thing for that defense that we've probably seen all season long.
And then offensively, obviously, you got Spencer Rattler at quarterback. That's one of the biggest storylines, I think, going into this game, just because of the history there with Spencer and the Gators. What have been your impressions of him this season after transferring over from Oklahoma? And how has he, transformed or kind of changed this offense?
Yeah, obviously expectations were through the roof when Spencer got to South Carolina. And, I don't think he, has quite lived up to that. I think that's fair to say. And there's some plays, some throws that I'm sure Spencer wants back. I think we all kind of underestimated how big of a adjustment it was going to be going from sort of that Oklahoma. It's kind of like, I guess, an air raid passing attack. But if you look at what they do, they really run the football a ton as well. And it's very quarterback friendly. And, there's just not quite as much on the quarterback. He comes to South Carolina. This is a very just NFL based offense where you're huddling up, you're under center at times, you're going play action where you're turning your back to the line of scrimmage, lots of different footwork, lots of different verbiage as far as what you have to just call in the plays. It's 4 or 5 words instead of the 1-word calls like you have at Oklahoma. So it's been a process, y'all. Like I think you can sort of see him thinking through it, getting more comfortable. And they've done some things as the year has progressed to kind of implement some of what he was doing at Oklahoma. So I think he's progressed. I think he's taken some unwarranted heat at times this year on things that probably weren't on him. You look at the interception numbers, they're not good, but There's one game where he literally, if you look at like the PFF numbers, he didn't have a single turnover worthy play, but he had 2 interceptions because he had 2 balls go straight off a receiver's hands, bounce up and get intercepted. So it's kind of interesting. Like, he came in with a lot of people expecting him to just put this offense on his shoulders and go. That has not happened.
That's what I thought was going to happen.
Yeah, that was kind of the expectation, Zach, because they went through last year. They had 4 different quarterbacks, and it was kind of like, all right, you've fixed that position now. That has not really been the case. However, there are plays every single game that you see, and you're like, that is an NFL level play. So he has made some of those plays. He's extended drives, and really, I think the thing he's tried to work on the most is knowing when to just step up in the pocket, hang out in there, let the play develop. He's so good outside the pocket, but sometimes he escapes so early that it invites pressure to him. And I think that's something they've worked on with him a ton this year, is just, step on up into like the area in the middle of the pocket, let the plays develop, and then get rid of the ball. So that's something he's focused on. And the big thing has just been, can they protect him? When they've protected him, he's actually been pretty good.
Yeah, it seems like, looking at his numbers, that when he has a clean pocket and no pressure, he's able to kind of pick you apart. And Florida plays a lot of zone. Florida fans, if they haven't scrubbed it from their memory, remember the Cotton Bowl, excuse me, when he did whatever he wanted to, that game. Going back to one thing you said earlier, with South Carolina being able to get pressure, it's interesting because the design runs for Anthony Richardson haven't been called as much, or at least his big runs, his big long touchdowns, and a lot of his most productive plays haven't come on, designed speed option or design quarterback draw. It's kind of been when, okay, guys are covered, the pocket's collapsing, let me, pick up basketball. What can I do and get out of here? Is that a concern? Is it almost like, okay, let's maybe even dial back our pressure a little bit to just try to keep him contained? Because if we force the play to break down, he's liable to run for 85 yards.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a huge concern for South Carolina, because a lot of their issues have been out there, like on the edge, on the perimeter. And Missouri just attacked them relentlessly out there on the edge, that little stretch play that Missouri loves to run, and then just little quick screens out there. Watching a little bit of Florida, I know they do some of that as well. So it's like just angles have really sort of hurt Carolina's defense. And I look at Richardson and I'm like, man, this guy can obviously has speed and size. And I don't know if it's a perfect comparison, but just the closest thing I have watching South Carolina try to tackle KJ Jefferson, like another quarterback with some size and his ability to fall forward against Carolina's defense. Arkansas really just kind of just stayed ahead of schedule on them. I think Florida is a little bit more like explosive than Arkansas. It seems like they're not necessarily always ahead of schedule, but they're going to get their big plays. So I think you look at Carolina's defense, they do play a lot of man coverage. So if I know with running quarterbacks, sometimes everybody just sort of gets run off, and then that opens up everything on one side of the field for a quarterback with his speed to create big plays. So I think that's a huge concern for South Carolina. I look at this game more like, I don't think you can expect to stop Florida. Like, I don't think you can expect to just like hold them to 14, 17 points. Like I fully think Florida can score, in the 30s. I think for Carolina, you're kind of hoping you can just make it difficult on them, make them earn everything, and maybe hold them to that kind of, 28-31, which is an area where I think Carolina's offense, if they play well, could maybe get into that area. Like we talk here sometimes about kind of playing to a score and how a game flow might play out. And I can't see South Carolina's defense holding that rushing attack to under, 21 points. Like that to me would be a major upset if that happens.
Yeah.
And then on that note, Wes, just what are some other ways that you see Carolina coming out with a win? What does Florida have to be wary of on both sides of the ball?
Yeah, I think this is a game where they would love to have Marshawn Lloyd fully healthy. Like I think, Florida, from what I've read, is a team that's maybe missed some tackles at times on defense. And Marshawn is one of the best, just by the numbers, tackle breakers in the conference. But Marshawn is banged up right now. He's going to be more of like a day-to-day decision still, I think. So Jaheim Bell, who is like kind of their do-it-all tight end, obviously, has played more running
Florida
back.
Commit.
Yeah, former Florida. Y'all know Jaheim. So they've moved him around. I think he's going to play some more running back this week as well. I think just for Carolina, against teams that aren't Vanderbilt or aren't just the out of conference teams they've played, the teams they can just do what they want against real SEC opponents, it's been about, can they run the ball enough to slow down the pass rush of the opponent? Because then that's, like we were talking about earlier, that's when Spencer can kind of go to work and get some things done, I think. So offensively, they've been a little boom or bust, lots of negative plays, but explosive plays kind of balance it out. And the other thing that Carolina has just stolen so many points with this year has been special teams. Like that's been their MO. Like they have stolen a possession or points or a couple of times multiple touchdowns by being better than their opponent on special teams. And that's something you can't always count on, but you kind of, if you're framing this thing up, you kind of have to be aware of it. If they find another way to steal a possession, to steal a touchdown on special teams, I think that can maybe be an equalizer. I think the line is about right, y'all. Like, what is it? 8 now?
Yeah,
9, 8.5? I think that's about right on paper. I think Florida is the better team. Carolina would need to steal a possession here or there. And then obviously, y'all know, turnovers, red zone, all that stuff. You got to win those battles. And that's been a battle for South Carolina. They have not been very good at winning the turnover battle.
Now, Wes,
I think South Carolina's -6 in the turnover battle, and like second to worst or third to worst in the SEC.
That sounds right. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I know quite literally when they win the turnover battle or even kind of break even, they've won those games. And then every game they've lost, they have lost the turnover battle. So that has been a key determining factor for them this year.
Yeah, you were right, Nick. Tied for second to last in the SEC in turnover margin, 100 nationally.
Not just a hat rack, my buddy, my guy. Not just a hat rack.
Before we let you go, Wes, I would not be doing our listeners justice if we did not get one of your favorite Steve Spurrier stories from his time at South Carolina. Definitely got to take advantage of some good memories that you might have.
Oh man, on the spot. There's so many. Actually, so Chris Clark and I were talking. I think we're gonna write a story, like a deep dive story on the day Steve Spurrier quit. And so the interesting thing about, this is only Steve Spurrier. The interesting thing about Steve Spurrier is when he quit, legendary SEC coach Steve Spurrier, he didn't gather the full team around and say, all right, guys, I'm out. So they're at practice. And the way it's been told to me is there is some like senior older guys that were kind of standing around on the side. Younger guys are on the field practicing. And he just goes, yep, guys, I think I'm done. I think this is it. And they're looking around. They're like, what? And he's like, yeah, I think this is it. I'm done. So practice ends. Half the team walks off knowing Spurrier has quit. And there's people on the coaching staff that still have no idea that has happened. And of course, guys are calling each other, texting each other. What is going on? What is happening? It starts hitting the media at some point. And then of course, what breaks loose, hits the national media. Spurrier's done. But that was one of those things, like only Steve Spurrier would just pretty much on a whim, it seems like, tell half the team, I'm done. The other good one around here was when he just freaked out on one of the media guys who he said was writing negative things and was just like middle of the press conference, walks in and is like, "You're out of here. I'm not answering a single question until this guy is gone." And it was a local columnist that used to, I guess, pick at him a little bit. And he kind of freaked out on him. So that was, I'm sure you put me on the spot, man. I'm sure there's so many like really good.
So you were in the room for that though.
Oh, when he flipped out. Yes. We were all looking around like, what do we do? I was young too. I was like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do, but I was rolling. I had my camera rolling.
Now, do you remember what also happened that same day later in the day?
I don't.
I think this was Spurrier. This is one of Spurrier's best. Garcia.
Yes. You are right.
What happened?
I've forgotten about that. That was when Garcia got dismissed for good.
Yeah, I was going to say, which time?
I think that was when he got dismissed for good. Do you think it was a diversion?
What better way to divert the media than to pull a stunt like that? That was classic.
Last year, Florida had a new sports information director who was on the road, and we're talking in the South Carolina press box, and there's a picture of Steve being carried off Florida field. And Steve is sitting next to the table that I'm talking to the SID about. And he's like, "Dude, that's Steve Spurrier next to us." I'm like, "Yeah, man, he works in the same building that you do. He's there a lot." He's like, "I didn't know he coached here." I'm like, "He coached here almost as long as he coached at Florida." I told him, I go, "And he has the memory of an elephant." And I think at this point, Steve had like heard us talking about him. And I go, "I bet you, if you ask him about that picture behind you and it's him being carried off the field, he'll tell you how many yards and how many carries Marcus Lattimore had." And Steve hears that and he goes, "Yeah, I think old Marcus carried the ball about 40 times for 212 yards and 3 touchdowns that game." And I'm not looking it up. I'm like, "Yeah, that's right. I have no idea. But if he said it, it's probably right." And the SID is like clicking on his keyboard and he looks at me and he goes, "That's exactly his stat line." I go, "Yeah, man. Like Steve Spurrier doesn't forget stats and little things from wins. Never."
Yeah, apparently he can still go back at one time. This was definitely true. He could go back to games when he played.
Yeah.
And tell you plays that were run, tell you personnel like this guy was here, this guy was here, this guy was here. Like it is. And that looking back, that's got to be part of the reason why he was such a good play caller. Because I think he retained so much about, especially when he was dialed in. Like you could tell when it was he's dialed in.
He was in his prime. Whew.
Yeah. And there were moments at South Carolina where you were like, all right, he's on today.
He's in the zone today.
Yes, he is in the zone. I told Nick earlier, man, on our podcast, I'm kind of jealous that y'all have the Spurrier restaurant there. Steve's just hanging around. Like I really just miss this. I miss hearing people tell stories about Spurrier here. And I miss just the quips, just every day there was going to be something said that was going to make you laugh. I feel like.
Yeah. There's nobody quite like him. He is one of a kind and a legend.
Definitely.
Yeah. He's a living legend.
Yeah.
Well, another living legend, Wes Mitchell. We appreciate your time, man. We glad we got you in the zone today, and definitely looking forward to this matchup. We appreciate all the perspective on South Carolina. Let folks know where they can follow you and read your work.
Yeah, come check us out, GamecockCentral.com. If you're a Florida fan who wants to read a little bit about your opponent, we got all kinds of stuff going on. So come on over. We'd love to have you, and be an interesting game. So we'll see what happens, I guess.
And if you're an On3 subscriber, of course, you can read all of their fantastic content as well. So we will see how things play out this weekend. Wes, we really appreciate the time. For Nick Del Torre, I'm Zach Abolverdi. We'll see you guys next week.